I guess it must be 7 o'clock. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate you joining us on this Valentine's Day. Happy second Tuesday of the month. As always, this is REEF's Fish and Friends. So a couple things we've got coming up. We have a Fishnar, which is our online webinars. They're kind of free fish ID classes that are used really for any time you want them, but they're really fun to do live because you can ask any questions you may have. And up next is beginner TWA Blennies, so tropical Western Atlantic, anywhere in the Caribbean. Blennies with Stacy Henderson, who's right back there. So if you want to see Stacy teach a fish ID class, tune in on Tuesday, February 21st at 8 p.m. And he'll be walking you through some of our most common Blennies we have here in the Caribbean. We also have a bingo night at Gardenia's Bistro, which is the restaurant inside of Island Home. Is that the correct nursery? Yes? Okay, yeah. And they are starting to do weekly fundraiser nights for nonprofits, and Reefs is going to be on Wednesday, February 22nd at 6:30 p.m. So stop on by, play a couple rounds of bingo, and see what's going on with Reef. I feel pretty lucky about bingo. That's trivia is a little dicey for me, but bingo, that's good. And then last but not least, we have the Reef Arts and Science Festival. That's going to be on Saturday, April 29th. We're really trying to get everyone here to connect with some of our local artists, our local vendors that are in the area. If you know a local artist or vendor that you would like to see be involved here, let us know for sure. We'd love to have them out. Our goal is to let everybody know that you don't have to go diving or snorkeling to be connected with the ocean. There's tons of other ways to do it, such as lionfish jewelry. Or I know some people are doing paintings and all sorts of other different things. So we'd like to really promote that here at Reef. So definitely put that on your calendars. I'll say that for the next several Fish and Friends as we get closer. We'll start to have our artists line up and things like that.
Is there a fee for entry?
For entry, I'm not, to be completely honest, I'm not sure. Our education outreach specialist, Moose or Madeline Mussey, reach out to her and she'll be able to provide you with all of the details. Okay, with that, does anyone have any community announcements? Anything going on in the Florida Keys? What's up, Bob? How we doing?
Good. History of Diving Museum tomorrow and every third Wednesday, a free presentation, both at the Diving Museum and virtually. Just go to divingmuseum.org. Tomorrow is about Florida Keys State Park Ranger talking about native plants, but every third Wednesday. Which is weird, it's after the second Tuesday. But this week,
second Tuesday, third Wednesday. Yeah, that is crazy. Oh, lined up perfectly this time.
7 o'clock.
Excellent. All right. And without any further ado, we have Abigail here from the Dolphin Research Center, and she is going to tell us all about cognitive dolphin learning in the Florida Keys. Abigail, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. I'm very nervous. Thank you guys for having me. And yeah, hopefully I don't say anything too silly. But my name is Abby. As I'm talking, I'm going to go through a couple different cognitive studies that have been done, but feel free to ask questions, anything like that I am here to talk about. So starting with, I am from Dolphin Research Center. If you are not familiar with us, we're down on Grassy Key, mile marker 58. Dolphin Research Center, that area has had dolphins since the 1950s, but since '84 has been Dolphin Research Center. We are an open to the public research facility. Day to day, people can come in and learn from the dolphins, get to know them, but we're also doing research, learning about them, and focusing on getting that information out there. Dolphins are wonderful for many reasons, but especially as an educator and as someone in the Florida Keys, dolphins are excellent ambassadors. Every species out there deserves a ton of press. It really does. There's so many important animals that deserve spotlight, deserve empathy, care, and unfortunately, not all of them always get it. There is a reason why World Wildlife puts pandas on the cover. Yes, yeah, they're charismatic, and for better or for worse, we like charismatic animals. We connect with them, and there can be many different reasons we connect with them. Cuteness, totally one, should not be overlooked, but also things like intelligence. We are interested in intelligent animals that connects with us. Animals that are social. We're very social. Think about in news stories about like a mother animal and her cub or baby. Those have often that connecting factor that is a tool for conservation as well as an important thing to know about them. These things are all things that people click on and go into versus the article that they skip and don't get that information. So we find it really, really important that these really important ambassadors get out there and show how amazing they are in many different aspects. A lot of what we do right now is learn about communication. I'll get into those sort of works. But in every study I talk about in here, and I want to talk about this first off the bat, is that every study we do with them is also totally voluntary. These animals are in our care, and we care for them immensely. But that includes when we're doing research. No research project is going to be worth an animal even just not having fun, much less being uncomfortable, anything like that. So it's all done with positive reinforcement, relationship-based training. They are amazing, and they are all super different. So one dolphin, like Tanner, I'm going to talk about Tanner a lot in this. He is 21 years old. He is perfect dolphin. Like, they're all perfect, but he's like really perfect. He's so great. He's so smart, and he loves a puzzle. He loves a challenge. When you give him something that's kind of new, at first he's like, okay, that's interesting. And when he realizes there's something there for him to solve, he is so fascinated. One of the most recent studies I worked with him on, there was a brand new apparatus. And the first part of the game, I just wanted him to see it. Just look, I'm putting something weird near you, check it out, and then come right back. And he goes and looks at it, and he is over there pressing buttons. He's looking on top. He's opening the blinds. And I'm sitting like, buddy, oh no, he's going. He just loves it. At that point, I was a painting on the wall because he just wanted to go into that problem solving. That's what's fun for him. The same study, different dolphin, the fabulous Miss Alita. Alita is a wonderful dolphin who would not even come close to me for 8 months after I started because she's like, I'm going to learn a little bit about you first. She is very smart, but she is her own lady. She's very opinionated, and that's super fun about Alita. So for Alita, this new thing she's staying away from it and looking at the people like, all right, you guys need to show me what this is because right now, this is kind of weird. And you walk her through it. Alita ended up being amazing at playing this game and using this apparatus. But part of the game was going to end up that there were no trainers. We wanted to do this totally blind from humans at the end. So instead, there was a tube that a fish went through, and that was going to be eventually the end game for it. Now, if Alita didn't play, she'd still get all her fish right afterwards. We'd never withhold food from them. But this way, there could be no trainers present and an easy way to give her a quick reinforcer. So Alita went up, she played the game, she got it successfully. That fish went down the tube, and she watched it go. And she put her face up, and she looked around, and we're all hidden. We're hiding behind the mangrove trees. We've got iPads to watch on cameras, and we're like, she is looking around. She looks at the game. Now, keep in mind now, she knows the game. She could continue to win the game and just get a fish for playing this, at this point, very, very simple game. Never touched it again. She was gone. She is the opposite of Tanner, who just loves a problem. Alita loves attention. Alita loves the spotlight. Alita is beautiful. She's got everything she does. She's graceful. She's elegant. She gets oohs and ahs from anyone. Even people that have never seen another dolphin, they see her and they're like, oh, she's just that girl. And once she knew that this game was going to be that simple, that there was no praise and attention and lavished affection from her trainers, that's not worth it for Alita. She gets fish all day. She gets fish for anything she does. She is not food motivated. She is very, very motivated by attention. She wants that praise. She wants that connection. And a game without that, it's nothing for her. So that being said, when we're researching them, their welfare takes precedence. We're never going to do anything to compromise that. And also, we have a job as scientists and as dolphin trainers to make a game that's scientifically sound, unbiased, which means you need lots of trials. You need a certain amount of structure, but also for them, fun and understanding of their individuality and recognizing who they are as dolphins and meshing them together, which is a really fun challenge. And sometimes we don't get a research project out of it, and that's okay. Sometimes we just did a fun game and tried it, and that's how it went. Other times we get a really neat project that learns about their minds. Either way, they're always going to come first. I always want to say that first. All right, so getting into it. Why study dolphins in human care like our dolphins? There are a couple reasons. One is that these studies work really well with wild studies. We cannot study every aspect of a dolphin in the wild. Studies on their perception, on aspects of their communication, like signature whistles, which I'll get into, cognition, even some aspects of physiology, like health assessments. These are all things we can only do with dolphins that live in human care. Now, of course, there's also things you can only do with wild dolphins: navigation, foraging, these things you need to work with wild dolphins, but these two complement each other to get a full picture that you can't always get. We'll get into detail on some of these, but for example, in cognition, looking at behavior is a great way to start looking at cognition, certainly. But behavior can also be deceiving. Just because an animal, let's take cooperation. Lots of animals cooperate, but does a human cooperate the same way a lion does? Do they cooperate the same as a wolf, as an ant, as a chimpanzee? All these animals cooperate, and they're amazing at it. They're really good at it. But is an ant thinking the same thing when it's working with other ants that a dolphin is thinking when they're working with other dolphins? You can break these down with cognition experiments, but you can't ask them, and you can't necessarily just observe it from behavior alone in the wild. So that's why we do these. There are more reasons too. One is, like I said, fun. For the dolphins, these are games for them. Our dolphins, like I said, they always get their food no matter what. They've never had to work for a meal. They always have it provided for them, but we can make these stimulating, fun games so that they have these like cognitive challenges and fun things to do. Now, again, not all dolphins think our research is super stimulating, and that's okay. Some dolphins opt out. They think we're boring. They like other things better. That's fine. But for some of them, like the Tanners of the world, Tanner thrives on this stuff. I have gone down not mentally on my game to be on Tanner's level, and he's going to go do something else because he's too smart for me most of the time. And I love that about him. But these games provide excellent mental stimulation, fun challenges, and problem solving, just the same way that we, have hobbies and play sports and do challenging things. We like it. It's fun, especially when we can do it in a way that's like safe and fun and beneficial for us. It also helps their care, especially things like understanding their minds, but also understanding their bodies, helps benefit them in human care, helps us provide better care for them. It's great education. It is wonderful to get to know these animals, but being able to actually see research done has a bigger impact than just watching it from a distance or not having a chance to see that research. So seeing the real thing with the researchers, with the dolphins participating, we do this every day and get to see that connection. And finally, like we talked about with our World Wildlife Cover animals, it's more information, which is always good, but it's also better inspiration. They are super intelligent. They are excellent ambassadors for the Florida Keys wildlife here, and showing people just how amazing they are. What they can do is great too. It's also great for myth busting, perhaps because they tend to be so well beloved. There are a lot of myths out there about dolphin cognition, some of them which are simply untrue, some of them that we don't really have answers for yet, but somebody in the past thought they had an answer and said it really confidently, really confidently, and it stuck. All of those things often are things that we're trying to kind of work out of what we know about dolphins is, some of these myths. Not necessarily like a big myth, but one that I hear a lot, for example, is like dolphins and musicality, possibly because of Greek mythology. There was a Greek myth of a young man. He was a musician thrown off a ship, and the dolphins helped him because they enjoyed his music. This may have come up because of dolphins whistling. They are very acoustic. They're very interesting to listen to, perhaps that. But for whatever reason, we often hear people like, oh, I hear they really like music. Not to say they don't, just that no one's ever really done like solid research on that idea. Some people say, oh, I heard if you play stuff for wild dolphins, they come over. First of all, don't do that. Second of all, usually people aren't playing other sounds up in the ocean. So unless you're bringing your white noise out with you, there's probably only a couple things you're playing. And then when you happen to see dolphins, oh, there's my confirmation bias swimming by the boat. I feel confirmed that, yes, my music brought them over. In fact, very little musicality studies have really been done with dolphins. Dolphin Research Center does have 3 animals on its site that do keep a beat. They keep rhythm. Yes. Does anyone know what any of them are? I'll give you a hint. It's not dolphins. Yeah. It's sea lions. Very close. Another pinniped. Sea lions. Sea lions can keep a beat. Ronan in California. It's a really cute video. Her favorite song was Boogie Wonderland. So cute. For her, they said it was Boogie Wonderland. That was the number one. And then there was also, I don't remember, it was a boy band. She liked a boy band a lot. And I don't remember which one it was now. I've not with the sea lions, but we actually have with the second animal that can keep a beat. This one is not a marine mammal. It's a parrot. Yes, it's a cockatoo. Our cockatoo loves exactly that. Yes, he loves a beat. Yeah, he likes to dance. Cockatoos and sea lions have both passed the ability to keep a beat, and humans. That's the third one. But dolphins have not. Now, again, it's not been something that's been studied super well, but they've never shown any kind of penchant for it, which is why no one's really looked into it. They don't show the behavior that you'd expect to see from a beatkeeper so far. Maybe that will change. That will be cool. Hopefully next time I'll have more info on that. But just one example of a thing that like, oh, okay, we haven't really looked into that, even though there's often this sort of idea of this concept around them. There's all kinds of those. Yes, check out that sea lion beekeeping. It's very cute. All right, so our three main areas of study, I'm going to mostly be focused on cognition, everything to do with the mind, how they think, memory, all of that fun stuff falls under cognition, problem solving. We also study behavior. If you ever come and visit us, you will know when a dolphin is involved in a behavioral research study because they will be wearing a little bit of zinc oxide on their dorsal fin. The same stuff that we use in our sunscreen, just usually has a little bit of safe food dye in it. In order to help tell dolphins apart for IDs. We can tell them apart. We know them very well, but especially when they're moving, when they're playing in their free time and doing their natural social behaviors, they move quite quick and you want to make sure you're getting nice, accurate data. We also work with outside scientists who might not be as familiar with them. So this way, I don't need you to know each and every individual dolphin's facial features. I can just tell you, hey, we're watching the dolphin with the green dot, so keep an eye out on them. But those are behavioral studies. And then finally, we also study husbandry, studying healthcare, studying their physiology. Super important for taking care of them. A lot of the techniques that we use now in modern rehabilitation of dolphins is from information we learned in human care. For example, in this photo, this is a dolphin who is asked to do a voluntary blood draw. So for a blood draw, we ask them, we show them the needle and ask them, will you give me your tail? If they choose to do it, they present you with their tail fluke. We take it from the tail. They've got blood vessels nice and close to the surface there. On the rest of their body, they've got that nice thick blubber layer. So the tail fluke is a great way to take that. They can opt out if they don't want to. I opt out of my blood draws as much as I can because I don't like them. But by showing them, I have a nice care provider who's very patient with me and can explain to me why it's important for me to do this and why it's safe. Same thing for them. Coach them through it. If they're interested, we can take that blood sample. And not only, of course, we only take these samples for things like their veterinary care. This is for their health care. But afterwards, we can also use this as a baseline. We know all the information about this animal. We know their age. We know their reproductive status. All of those important things can be considered into that. And then when we have wild dolphins, if you have a rehabbed dolphin, you won't know what's wrong with these samples unless you know what's right. We have that information now thanks to things like this. They also do a lot of other ones. They do voluntary urine samples, gastric samples, fecal samples, all those same kind of things they are able to do on signal when they're interested. All right, so we've been talking about intelligence. We've been talking about how dolphins think. So it doesn't have to be animals. It can be in humans. It can be in animals, any way you think. How do you measure intelligence? What is a thing we use to try to measure intelligence? A test. Great, yeah, a test. Taking a test. Yay, you won the test. A+. You're graded for this. Who knew? Just kidding. Anyone else? What kind of tests? You can get specific too. IQ test. Very nice. Yeah, we got IQ tests.
Manipulating physical objects.
Good. Manipulating physical objects. Think about like little kids. They're not ready for their SATs, but you can give them toys and objects. See what they do with that. Puzzles. Very nice. Mirror test. I love that one. We'll talk about that one. That's a good one. Mirror test. These are good ones. Oh, I heard.
There's another test where you can point at food and they'll take the food and then you move it and point the other way. And if they recognize your point, that's signs of cognitive ability.
Yes, very nice. Yeah, it's like using gestures, social test. Have you ever seen the puppy lab at Duke? No. Oh, they run that. They do. It's like a big puppy lab by Brian Hare, who does a lot of like, if you ever heard the survival of the friendliness theory, he does a lot of social animal work about evolution to be social. And he uses that test as a parameter for everything else he does. It's a really good one. So he's talking about like basically a pointing test, but more importantly, being able to read and understand that. It's a very good one. We actually tried to run one in dolphins and they didn't think it was very cool. So we don't know. We didn't get it, but hopefully we'll find a way that they will find fun. The Duke lab ran originally with puppies and they have videos of that online too. And it's very cute. Little bitty puppies trying to follow those cues. Yeah, super fun. I like these. All right, so you named a lot of these big ones, things like an IQ test, a standardized test. Now getting into that, show of hands, who thinks that standardized testing is the be-all end-all of knowing who a smart person is? I got a great score on my SAT, so I'm the smartest one ever. Yeah, most good job. I didn't. That was a lie. That's not true. It's not true. Because I noticed I didn't see a lot of hands. Standardized tests, they tell you something, but there are certainly intelligences that don't get caught by a standardized test. Intelligence is really, really diverse, just like us. There might be somebody who is an excellent professor in their field. Actually, this is some story on the internet. Amazing in their field, and then you see them walk up to the buffet table and they put a piece of watermelon between 2 slices of bread. You're like, oh, that can't be right. But they're doing it. People are very, very different. And same thing, street smarts might not do well on some of these standardized tests. But if you're stuck alone in the city, you want someone with street smarts, not watermelon sandwich professor. Very smart, but not who you need in that moment. Same thing with animals. A lot of them, the areas where they're intelligent are based on what they need. What do I need to survive? And if there's some area of intelligence that they don't need to survive, why develop it? I don't need that skill. So same thing with us, where testing is a way to learn something about intelligence. It can never be the be-all end-all, because you have to think about, like, what do they need to survive? What do they need to be intelligence? Tool use is another one. For a long time, we said, oh, humans were so special because we use tools. Nobody else does. Lots of other animals do. It's actually really widespread. But for a long time, that was considered something very special, very unique, because we love to say humans are super unique. We're really interested in human intelligence. So tool use has been one. Communication, language skills, language understanding. We talked about that a bit with, like, button usage, games like that. Communication, especially communication in a human-y way. Understanding, like, mathematics, self-awareness, which is where our mirror test comes in, is understanding theory of mind, knowing that my mind is different than yours, We all think differently. We all came into this room with different information that no one else in the room might know. That is that self-awareness at a higher level, is understanding that. Behavior in general, especially flexibility in behavior. Maybe an animal can do this one amazing task, but if you change the task in any tiny way, they can't do it anymore. They only do it this one way. So looking at behavior and flexibility, and brain size has been thought to be one in the past too, of, big brain. We have pretty big brains, especially for our body size. What does that mean? I see a question from the audience, or from the live stream audience.
From Juan. He asks, could we be studying behaviors that are not part of the dolphin's nature and are conditioned by being in care?
Excellent question. So when we are studying their behavior, yes, we have to understand these dolphins are in human care. So yes, their behavior is influenced by us, absolutely. That's automatically going to be written into it, especially if you're training a study. And I'll talk about this. I won't go through the training of every single study I talk about, because we would be here all night. But whenever we're doing a study where we're asking a dolphin to make a choice or make a selection, you do have to be really careful to not be influencing it with human bias, but also that we are testing them on something we didn't train them. So for example, if I were teaching you math in class, I might show you 1 + 3, I might show you 5 + 6, but on the test, I'm going to test you on novel problems that I didn't show you in class. Otherwise, I might have just had you memorize the things I showed you, and now you're spitting that information out on the test, but you don't really understand the concept of addition. You're simply spitting back out information. Same thing for them. When we're talking about testing something in an animal, we have to make sure that we're not training the answer. Obviously, you still have to do some training. You can't just pop into math without any background. Maybe some people can. I can't pop into math without any kind of background. I need to be taught these things, but you have to have tests that are different than the training. So that's one way you can avoid that. And things like behavior, certainly our dolphins are very friendly with people. So I wouldn't suggest doing a study to study dolphin-human interaction and compare it one-to-one with the wild, because that doesn't make any sense. But there are other aspects of behavior where this is the closest look we can have on it. For example, when we have like a rescued calf who ends up needing to be rehomed, that decision is made by National Marine Fisheries Service. When they are introduced to like a mama dolphin, we can listen to the sounds they make and listen to those communicative signals to understand more about mom-calf reunions, to understand what are they using this for. Something you can't do in the wild. You don't want to go chasing down a mama and a baby in the wild. That's not fair for them. But we can listen into that up close thing. Would we say, hey, what we just heard from these two dolphins is how they all do it? Definitely not. But it still gives us info that we couldn't get in the wild while understanding that it's under human care. It's a great question. And again, it has to be factored into all of these, some of them in different ways. But if someone has questions about, like in an individual study, how did you do that? Let me know. All right. Oh, and also if you're interested, everything I talk about from here on out is published. So it's in journals, but it's all in different journals because we publish in a lot of different areas. So you can go to our website, dolphins.org. I've got a QR code on the last slide too, where you can check out, we have a research tab. This is references and abstracts that you can find all these individual papers. So if you want to really read one of these and read it in its original form in that published journal, it'll be in here and you can find it on our website to follow up on that. Starting with numerosity. So it was actually, this was one of the dream questions our co-founder, Mandy Rodriguez, wanted to answer, is understanding dolphins' understanding of numerosity. So we designed a study that we call LESS. Can dolphins compare quantities and choose a lesser amount? One of the reasons this came up is, of course, in foraging. You want to go after more fish, not less fish. But also in dolphins, male dolphins have really interesting social dynamics. They will have male rivals and they will have alliances. And they will often compete over access to female dolphins. And what they've seen in the wild is if males come up and their rival group has a lot of members with them, it appeared like they would go get some allies. They would go get some numbers. This is really interesting. And were they really doing this? Still don't know the answer to that, but they do seem to do it quite a bit. And in this case, we were able to really look at, do they understand quantity? So this is Talon. Talon is presented with two boards with a different amount of dots on it, is randomized. And you also see the dots are in random patterns determined by the computer. So they're not memorizing, like, you don't have to count the number of dots when you roll some dice. If you got a 6 on the dice, you don't have to sit there and count, you know what that is. Versus this is also 6, and you actually may have had to look at it twice to know how many dots are on that because it's not a pattern that we've memorized. And you also see those dots are different sizes. We're not interested in area or volume, so not white space versus black space. We're interested in quantity. So if I had 2 really big dots and 3 itty bitty ones, doesn't matter. 2 is always less than 3, no matter how large or small they are. So all of that considered, finally, you see that the trainer is sitting in this beautiful hut of canvas. We work with what we can. We're a not-profit. So we get materials wherever we can find them, as long as they're safe. But that is to blind it. So she is sitting in here. She can see Talon, and she's interacting with Tal, but she cannot see the dots on either side. She does not know which side is the correct answer. It's kind of hard to see, but the blind comes out enough that she can't tell which side is correct. Instead, there is another person hidden behind with a periscope, and they're going to be the ones actually saying, yes, the dolphin got it correct, or no, the dolphin chose incorrectly. This way, we don't influence their behavior. Dolphins, we've already seen, very smart, but very socially smart, very good at reading body language, and as being very smart social animals, if they can cheat off your paper, they will. They're just that smart. So if you know the answer, we even have videos of, like, when we're putting in the blinds and doing training or doing practice rounds, we can look at ourselves in the video and we're like, at the correct answer, like, yeah, go get the correct one. We want them to win. We love them. We want them to succeed, but that's not good science. So when we're doing it for testing, once we're ready in this process, we fully hide it so that the trainer has no idea until Talon has already selected if he went for the correct answer or not. If he is right, we throw a big party. If he's wrong, no big deal. Neutral response, reset up. Some dolphins, you might give them something to distract them for a bit. So it's like, hey, you got that wrong, but no big deal. Your Talons and Tanners of the world, they sit up and they're like, I want to go again. They just want to try the puzzle again. They want to figure out the game. But that is how we blind that. So this was published in the Journal of Comparative Psychology, and Talon crushed it. He was great at this. He's still really good at this. He still plays this to this day. Even if he hasn't seen it in a while, when we bring out this game, he's still very, very good at it. They were very successful and can tell the lesser amount. Now, we know that he can tell lesser amount. This isn't counting. We did not prove counting or anything like that. You can think of this as if I asked you what's taller, the table or me. I'm taller, but that's different than me asking you, hey, exactly how tall am I? That's a different question. So this is just that comparison is what we got so far.
Is he indicating it? Is he not nodding?
Oh, he touches it. So he actually comes up and touches the board, the top of the board he selects. The reason why we did it with touching is, again, dolphins are very smart. Before Talon knew the game, there was a period of time where he was, kind of learning trial and error. What's the pattern here? And he would kind of waver. He'd go to one, he'd look at Emily, the trainer. Okay. And now he'd go to the other and kind of look at her. I'm like, okay. So having it be that the decision-making is touching lets him look at them as much as he wants, but also means he can't go, oh no, I picked that one. He's making that nice firm decision. And
Can you do it with both genders? You said the males.
This study we did do with 2 boys. However, in general, both males and females participate in a lot of different research. There's no evidence that one is like more successful at it than the others or anything like that. It tends to be, so female dolphins tend to live in really big changing social groups. Males tend to live in smaller groups, and our dolphins right now reflect that same pattern you see in the wild. So it's typically easier for us to schedule a smaller lagoon group. So it's like a weird logistic thing that we do tend to have a lot more of these sort of tests with the boys, but it's more of a like social logistics thing than like oh, the boys are really good at this over the girls. That being said, actually our most published dolphin is a girl. It's Calusa. And she's super well published because she is a very fast learner, and she is a very she looks at this stuff and she's like, okay, it's penciled in, I'm ready to go. And then she's done. She's an efficient learner. And she's a lot of fun with that. So most of these let's see, is it? Yeah, a lot of these I'm going to end up talking with boys. We do have studies where we have tested both males and females, and they both did equally well. And I'll talk about one where they did do different, but we don't know if it's just because of a small sample size or not. That's a great question. All right, this next one, this is object permanence. This is a very simple study, but it's a really interesting one. So for those of you who don't know, object permanence is if I show you my remote here. Nobody looked really surprised. Nobody looks really shocked. I'm going to guess that most of you seem to have object permanence, unless anyone had a bit too much of the nice beverages out there. You understand hidden objects. You know that the remote did not just disappear from existence. It still exists. And then number 2, you probably have a good guess of where my remote is. Where do you think it is? Hopefully you think it's behind my back. Ta-da! So that's basic object permanence. You know the object is hidden, and you know that it probably went in the last place you saw it go, which was behind me. So the way that we tested this, we chose this because it's a great way to compare it amongst other animals as well, and humans. We are not born with object permanence. That is why peekaboo is so exciting when you're a little baby. We typically develop this a bit later on. So we were showing them, in this case, we used a favorite toy, a stuffed alligator. We showed them the alligator and hid it in one of 3 buckets and asked them, where'd the alligator go? And they touched, again, similar to the last panels, they touched the bucket where they remembered the alligator going. This version of it, they passed. They could do this. This is visible displacement object permanence. You can probably see where the next step of this goes. So the next thing we're interested in is called invisible displacement. This is, see my remote? Now you don't. And now where is it? It's harder. Not really for us. We're really good at object permanence. But for a lot of animals, what I just did is actually a lot more cognitively challenging. That's called invisible displacement. And dolphins failed. Every single one of them did. Calusa, Tanner, a lot of dolphins were tested in this. So what we did is we hid the alligator and we moved the bucket with the alligator in it, and they got it right about 1/3 of the time. So around chance. Invisible displacement for us is really easy. So it's kind of odd to us, but there's a lot of animals that don't pass this stage. It's very interesting. If you want to look into it, look into, like I said, object permanence, invisible displacement in animals. There are some studies out there where oh, we did find that they had it if you made this very specific apparatus designed for that animal, but when you use a really basic one, which admittedly, this is not how dolphins would naturally choose things. So that you have to understand that in a project like this. But even so, it's a pretty, hide the thing, move the thing, and they don't have it. But there may be other reasons for this too, talking about what does a dolphin need? If a dolphin is in the wild and a fish hides under the sand, does anyone know what a dolphin is going to do? Could dig, could go under, physically move it. Anything else? Anything more? Pick another fish. Yeah, forget that one. Anything else? Think more specific to dolphins. Listen to it. Very nice. Yes, they are very, very acoustic animals, and they have echolocation. They have biologic sonar. If a fish hides beneath sand, Dolphins don't need to cognitively reason about where did that fish go. Dolphins can echolocate. They know where that fish went. And they're really, really, really good at this. When we bring these buckets out, echolocation doesn't work in air. We don't want it to. We're not asking them to echolocate. We want them to reason about a hidden object. But why would they need that reasoning ability if they literally have it? It might mean that, like, Superman might not have good object permanence because he can see through things that he wants to. But that's a totally different discussion. For dolphins, this is, again, trying to get into their heads, and also means a lot of things that we test, for example, theory of mind tests in children, if anyone's familiar with those, they actually need invisible displacement object permanence. All of the tests that we run for that tend to use this skill. And in the past, there have been studies where, oh, dolphins failed this kind of theory of mind test, but in order to pass it, they would need invisible displacement object permanence. So you're not studying theory of mind, you're studying object permanence on accident. Which means it's very challenging to do comparative studies because a lot of human studies take this ability for total granted because it's not hard for us. We do this very, very simply once we're old enough to. That's like 12 to 24 months, I think, in children for invisible displacement. Yes?
Do you have dolphins of like various ages to compare different age groups?
That's a great question. Do we have different age group ones? We do, but not with super young. So not within the age group where humans fail. Would be neat, but at that age, they're not doing training. They're with their moms and they're drinking. They're not old enough for that kind of play. But it's a really interesting question. If we could find a way to test it, it would be cool. So in humans, we fail, like I said, we fail this task until 12 to 24 months, somewhere in that area. In dolphins, we don't test it in anyone that young because they're not playing these games yet. It's only been adults, but adults of many different age classes. It's a great question. Yes, all right, so that's object permanence. The next one is blindfolded imitation. Yes, that's Tanner. And he's wearing a blindfold. He's so cute. So let me first talk about that. It's an eye cup. It's basically a light suction cup. It's very soft, and Tanner is well trained in using them, and he can take them off. If at any point Tanner does not wish to wear the eye cups, he can simply blink or open his mouth, and either way, it releases the suction, and the eye cup pops right off. So he is not asked to wear these for a long period of time, and anytime he decides he's done, he pops them right off. But if you ever get a chance to come in and see him when he's in one of these projects, he's amazing at wearing them. As we talked about, as far as movement in the water goes, they have echolocation. So this is only blinding his vision, which for a dolphin in their natural habitat, they're really super mobile. Yeah, if you watch him move around, you wouldn't even know he was blindfolded if you didn't see them, because they're really excellent navigators, as they're meant to be in water. Obviously, the clarity often is so that they don't use their vision as much. They have good vision, but they have that echolocation. What we were interested, though, is flexibility in imitation. So let me back that up a little bit. Imitation is another behavior, very cool, very natural to humans. We are very good imitators. We imitate from a very young age, and not super widespread in the animal kingdom. There are some behaviors that sometimes look like imitation, but the flexibility of them is limited. For example, if a car goes by and a dog goes to chase it down the fence of the backyard, and then the other dog goes to chase as well, is that dog imitating the running of the first dog? Or are they both responding to the same stimulus? Or is the dog just instinctually running because another dog's running? If my pack member's running, I'm running too. I'm not asking questions. We're just running, not meaning to imitate the behavior of running. That's just instinct. Same thing with a lot of animals. If one animal sniffs something, other animals tend to be drawn to it, but are they imitating sniffing? Probably not. They might just be, it's more of interest in what another animal's interested, drawn to the same location, but not imitating a behavior. And then what is the natural behavior for that animal? If it's sniffing, that's what they're going to do first. It's not true imitation. We say monkey see, monkey do. Not true. Monkeys don't display really true flexible imitation. Copycat, one study suggests maybe, but a lot of them suggest not a lot of flexible, true imitation in cats. So we were interested in dolphins. Dolphins are incredible imitators. They're often considered second best imitators if you put humans first. And we were interested in pushing this envelope. So, okay, we think they can imitate. Can we make imitation harder? Can we make imitation weirder? And how do they respond to it? So Tanner wore, like I said, these nice eye cups that he can pop off. And we asked him to use a signal he already knew, which means, can you imitate another dolphin? He was incredible at this. He didn't need really any training other than working on the eye cups. it's as natural as him doing the imitation with vision. Okay, pretty cool. But we're interested in, okay, how is he doing that? He can't see them since we've restricted his vision. And we figured he was using that amazing echolocation. So we put in a hydrophone, and he was not. He was not echolocating. They consciously turn on and off echolocation. They don't echolocate all the time. He didn't need echolocation. So we said, oh, we didn't make it hard enough. So maybe a dolphin model, a little too easy. Dolphin is easy for him to imitate. He knows their behavior super well. This part was published in the International Journal of Comparative Psychology. Next, we published in Animal Cognition, imitating a different animal in the water. He imitated people. So now we're doing the same thing. Tanner is asked to wear blindfolds and copy a person swimming. People and dolphins, if you didn't know, they look really different. They got tail instead of legs, flippers instead of arms, but we can try to do some of those same behaviors. Tanner still was super successful at this. He was great at it. This was not a chance. This is kind of the start of like a body mapping idea that he can understand, even though we look different. I see where those correlate. But what was really, really interesting is this time we put in that hydrophone again, and this time Tanner did echolocate. He intentionally turned on that echolocation to get more information for the more difficult challenge. What was neat is this was the first time this ability had been seen in any non-human animal, which is the ability to cross-modally imitate and to choose to switch pathways in order to copy that. And like I said, Tanner was the first non-human animal to ever show that. What a guy. He's just Superman. But it was really interesting. So to give you guys an idea, if I ask you guys, hey, can everybody imitate me right now? Wow, great job. Yeah, it's really not hard for us. Okay, I'll have you guys close your eyes. And this is a bad place to put this. Okay, don't look at that. You should have had your eyes closed. Everybody close your eyes and imitate me now. Oh, thank you. All right, now keep your eyes closed, and imitate me now. There are a lot of different things. All right, you can open your eyes. The first one was maybe more akin to Tanner being able to imitate another dolphin. You heard a very familiar sound. We know that sound. We don't need a lot of extra info to imitate that info. The next one I did, okay, I cheated. It didn't really have a sound applied to it. But if you really wanted to, let's say that I was telling you I'd give you $100 if you were able to imitate me on the third one, you might come over and try like your sense of touch. You can't hear me anymore, you can't see me anymore, but you can use another sensory to kind of figure out, okay, what am I doing with my arms? That's more akin to what Tanner was doing at that moment. He was making that conscious choice to get up and do a little extra work to get that sensory information. That's the ability that, again, hadn't really been seen before that Tanner showed, and it was no big deal for him. It was a big deal for the scientific world. So I talked about this a little bit before, but one of the other things we're interested in is communication. And one of the things we are able to do is study like communication with moms and calves. This is not something you can do with dolphins in the wild. Number one, communication in dolphins is really tricky in general. One being that they make a ton of sounds and they don't have to move to make them. They make all those sounds not all of them, but almost all their sounds internally from under that blowhole with a series of air sacs. So a dolphin can be making sound and they don't move their mouth. They don't move their body. They look totally neutral, but they are communicating. And that makes it hard to study. You can't just put in one microphone because you won't know which dolphin in the group is making which sound. There are ways to do this in the wild, but it's challenging and it's a little more disruptive, and it's not something that you want to do with mom and calf, and it's not something you can do long term. You can only do it like opportunistically. Whereas we are able to put in an array of hydrophones and record all kinds of interesting communication. This one was done with Dr. Stephanie King. If you're familiar with the Shark Bay dolphins, that is her area. She is super cool. You should check her out. But we were looking at calf whistles and mom whistles when they're with babies. And what you see here is actually these first couple weeks here was when two of our dolphins, Pandora and Calusa, were expecting. So they had baselines very similar to day-to-day for dolphins as to when they were pregnant. And then right here on week 6, this was when they had their babies. So you see here, this is the amount of whistles they did. So it went from relatively quiet, just a normal rate of whistles, to baby born, significantly more whistling. So these whistles that I'm talking about are right here. And I'm very sorry, but I am going to do a dolphin whistle at you, just so you know what you're doing at the spectrogram. But this is, who is this? This is Calusa making her whistle. And so it would come here and goes, wee-oo, 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 and it's quiet, and then you hear another one. So each one of these That is her signature whistle. Signature whistles are a whistle that each dolphin has. It's unique to them. You can roughly think of it like a name. It's an identifier whistle that they use to ID themselves. They use it to introduce themselves to another dolphin. They'll also use it sometimes when they're excited. They'll do a whistle. In the case of like moms and calves, if the calf gets into some trouble, you'll hear whistle, 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 as mom tells them, you get your little tail over here. So it has a wide variety of uses. But what's really cool about sig whistles is, like I said, each dolphin has their own, and they can imitate and create the whistle of each other. This is where it's different than a call. A lot of animals have a me sounds. They have a call they make, but they only ever make their own. Dolphins will make the whistles of other dolphins they know, which also means it's hard to study, because just because I see Calusa's whistle, this doesn't mean Calusa made it. It might mean her sister made that. It might mean her mother made it. So you have to know which dolphin is making which. In this case, the girls made their unique signature whistle. So each mom made her whistle significantly more post having a calf. And you see it stayed really high for the first 4 weeks. So for those 4 weeks, she's doing an abnormal amount of whistling. This kind of makes sense, because the theory before was that they use those whistles to reunite with calf. Dolphin calves are born swimming. Day number 1, they can go anywhere they want. Mom does not have any grace period where the baby just sits there. They go, go, go. So mom wants to make sure she has a way, 1, for calf to know who she is, and 2, to be able to join back with mom. But again, they hadn't been able to really study this and understand it with pregnancy until Pandora and Calusa showed us here. That's a neat one. Their whistles are all really cool. We actually even have like pendants of their unique whistles. So if you like have a dolphin you're close with, having their unique whistle. Yes.
So I'm wondering if it has any correlation with the development of their eyes.
Oh, that's a great idea. This I don't know, because I don't know anything about baby dolphin like vision, but I would like to know.
Okay.
That's an excellent thought. I don't know a lot. That doesn't mean it's not out there. I just don't know it. But it's a really, really interesting idea. They are, like, we joke and call them like bumper babies at first, because the babies just go, and they're all over the place. They can go, but they're not like the graceful grown-ups yet. I do, now that you're saying it, I remember someone else talking about, like, we also don't know echolocation development. They navigate with echolocation, and we have no idea, like, babies listening, they don't seem to do it at first, but there hasn't been a lot of, like, when do they develop that? And it'd be cool, but it would be neat to think with vision too, and I don't know, with the two of those, between the two of those, that would be really interesting to look at. Yeah, that's a great thought. And yes, the whistles. Signature whistle stuff is so neat. It's really, like, if you want to go into a rabbit hole, be aware that there are some older papers that, like, are outdated now. There's, like, a lot of work like this. We started learning about them in the 60s, and we've learned a lot since then. So, like, beware. But it's really, really interesting, and there's more stuff coming out all the time. This is an area that, like, personally, I'm really, really interested in, is this sig whistle, both development and usage of it, because it's such a unique thing, and it's a lot of fun. Yes.
You mentioned the old research.
Yes.
We know that the Navy used to be very interested in dolphins.
Yes.
And the dolphins. And is that research available to you folks? Do you utilize it? Do you build on it? Or
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we do. Talking about Navy research, we do the Navy program. Again, they give a lot of care for their animals. They still have dolphins in their care and still do research with them too. Their research has been a lot focused on echolocation. So a lot of the stuff I'm talking about echolocation, it's because of the Navy that we understand a lot of that. And they also do a lot of the health assessment work, especially, like, there's just a lot of the specifics that they've done. So yes, working with them. Obviously, they are Navy dolphins. So there are some things that are specific to their system, which is also very interesting. But like the research-wise, they share it and work with us to teach us a lot of, like, husbandry techniques. Some of them, like, came out of the Navy first, and they said, hey, this really helped our dolphins, and got it out to other facilities to use too. Yeah, which is super cool. Yes.
Have you found that the mom creates a signature whistle for the baby, like they name the baby?
Oh, a great question. Yes, the question was, does the mom create the signature whistle for the baby? We do know the answer to that, and it's no. Baby makes their own. Yes, super cool, or at least from the dolphins that we've seen so far. Let me say, we haven't talked to every dolphin yet. But what we've seen yet, I am very ambitious. So what we've seen is that the babies, even when they're very little, they do make a very, like, what we call it, a very simple whistle. It's just kind of a whistle. It doesn't have all the neat, like, detail that, like, Calusa's here does. And then as they get older, they start to try stuff out. It's a lot like kids. They babble. They make nonsense whistles and they're working on it. Yes, it's super cute. And they start to develop it. And then you start to get into that pattern. Typically around 6 to 8 months is when baby starts to make their whistle. Now, this is where there's been some older work that's like just now starting to kind of get rewritten, is that there used to be theories that like babies had similar whistles to mom and we're starting to see that that might not have been true. There are a couple reasons why that stuff was done with wild dolphins, and we think there was, we learned more since then. Hey, that's a great thing. But what we do see is that dolphins do tend to make whistles like within their group, kind of similar, even within a regional area. So if you listen to whistles in Florida, they sound a little different than the whistles in Australia. Like they have they call it like a dialect, an accent. Yeah, just like if there was an Australian in the room, we'd know. They didn't need to tell us, we'd hear it. They're speaking the same language, but we hear that difference. You can loosely think of it kind of similarly that you do see. So there is evidence that they make their whistles based on sounds around them. So it's unique to them, but they do make it by picking up things in their area and incorporating it. But yeah, it's unique to them. But yeah, the babies. So what we also see is if the baby wanders, when mom wants to call them over, she actually uses her whistle. So she goes, mom, 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 instead of calling baby, baby, baby. It's how dolphins sound. So that's a cool way that they use the whistle, and it makes sense. But it's a little different than us. We'd probably use the child's name instead of our own to get their attention. Yeah, you have another question?
You kind of answered my question,
Okay,
but
cool.
a little bit further, do they instinctively know then that mom means I have to go? Mom or did say, I'm going over here, and some fish over here.
Great question. Do they instinctively understand the whistle means come to mom? Right now, I'm going to say in general, we don't know. And one reason why it's hard is baby dolphins can be very precocious. We have some babies who are total mama's calves, and they sit by their mom, and when mom whistles, they come every time. And we've seen some calves that are like, just like us. We all have the good kid and the kid that's going away. It happens. It does with dolphins too. So we do, at least like this area, we do think that this might be in order to help with imprinting. So baby knows mom's whistle. I hear her whistle all the time, so I know that's my mom's whistle. That's the whistle that I respond to. And that does lend some actual evidence that like, yes, they're listening to that whistle and know like this is the time period where they're learning about it. And now they know that that's my mom's whistle. They need to come back to mom. They will have other girls helping. They have nannies. They have allo-parenting. So they get assistance from, yes, grandma, auntie, all of them. But you need to know who mom is because they're nursing. So even though you might have a very helpful aunt, if she's not lactating, they can't spend their full time with them. They need to get their milk from mom. So that might play an important role of making sure you know who mom is and to come to mom for that. That's a great question. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting area. And yeah, SIG whistles there's a lot there. Speaking of, this is our button study that I talked about before, which we jokingly called C&C for cooperation and communication. That's when we also worked with Stephanie. And this game is super cool. There were actually 3 publications that came out of it, and I'm going to try to talk about them kind of fast. But this is Delta and Reese. Delta and Reese are wearing zinc, and they're also wearing D tags. They're wearing hydrophones on their foreheads. They are, again, light suction cups. They also can take them off. It's super fun when they do. These things are $3,000 a month to rent. So it's really fun when you find out your dolphin can hide them under the dock from you. They're so fun. Luckily, we were donated to the tags, which was very kind of the people who made them. But even more so when they're donated to you, you really want those bad boys to come back. But they are wearing these tags in order to help listen to their sounds. We are interested in communication. And we asked them to do a cooperative task. So on either dock, on either side for my live stream audience, it's the docks you see in kind of the top right and top left corner there in the lagoon. There are underwater buttons, and they are hooked up to a computer. That's me, to a computer. And those buttons are programmed so that if the buttons are pressed within 1 second of each other, they play a success sound. If the buttons are pressed and there's more than 1 second in between button presses, so you press 1001 and then someone else presses the other one, it makes a soft sound that's more to let the trainers know that a dolphin made a choice and that there was no partner there. And we were interested in studying teamwork. I talked about it before. A lot of animals cooperate, but how much do they understand about cooperation? Do you know that your partner is helping you succeed? Do you understand your partner's role in cooperation. And this was something that wasn't known in dolphins. So the reason we use this button pressing task is because we were interested, not only can they understand, oh, I only win the game if me and my partner go together and press, but we could also look at the accuracy, look at how good they were at succeeding at this task. Previous cooperation work, a lot of it uses like rope pulling tasks, and those are good for some cooperation ability, but they are very imprecise. You can have a big time period if you're pulling a rope and someone else is pulling a rope. Basically, the goal is you pull the rope together to get the reward or get the reinforcer. There's a big window of time that you can succeed. Also, the rope tends to move. So for a lot of animals, teamwork or not, a moving rope is interesting. It doesn't matter what's on the other end of it. So for these, we really wanted to break it down into this button pushing task that we could really isolate into just these presses. So study 1 was, can dolphins work with their partner, press these buttons? We taught them how to press the buttons. We taught them nothing else. They had to just try the game. And sometimes they won just by coincidence, but most of the time they didn't, and they had to work it out. Once they were really succeeding at the task, then we moved the buttons very far away. I'll show you guys what the buttons look like. Actually, so stage 1. Now at the bottom of the screen, you can kind of see the underwater buttons. And this is actually Calusa and the beautiful Alita playing this game. There are still people present, so Alita is still playing with us. But you see Calusa here and Alita pressing those buttons at the same time, nice and close. So in training, this is where we started. And this next one is where we ended up with the buttons nice and far away. So part 1, do they understand? Can they time it out and work with a partner? Yes, they were great at this. Not only could they understand their partner, not only did they succeed a lot, they averaged within 1/3 of a second. Better than the trainers did. Yes, yeah, it's really, yeah, once you hear that, that's hard to do. They were pressing this, and again, within 1 second of their partner. Incredibly precise, accurate teamwork. Great question. Study number 2. What are they doing? How are they doing it? They were echolocating, but what we found was actually more telling of success was whistles. They used those whistles. Yes, so these hydrophones I talked about, we also had hydrophones around the lagoon. We had a hydrophone over here. We had one here. We had so many files to look through after each trial, but it was so worth it. So we listened in, and what was really cool is the dolphins were more successful on trials where they whistled right before pressing. And what we tended to hear was dolphin 1 whistle, dolphin 2 whistled, dolphin 1 whistled, and they press. So you get whistle, 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 go. Yes, a little bit. Yeah, it feels like that. Now, this is where it gets really fun and complicated. I've talked about signature whistles. Reese here, look at that cutie pie. He used his, I think, oh, was it Reese? One of the dolphins used his signature whistle. So he was making his unique sound. The other dolphin used a whistle, but he didn't make his, and he didn't make Reese's. He made what right now the dolphin scientific community calls a variant whistle, which is any whistle that isn't a sig whistle, which, as you can imagine, is a lot of variants. We're still working on it. Actually, we are working on that right now, of continuing to do analysis of what were these whistles? Do we hear similar things in other dolphins? To unpack that a little more, because right now that's all we got, is that they were more successful when they whistled before a button press trial. We also saw that the different partners were slightly different. So we tested many different dolphins. Calusa and Alita did do this part of it. And Calusa and Alita also were more successful with whistles, but they tended to also use a lot more sort of body language, if you will. They would kind of swim together until the last minute and break apart. Whereas Delta and Reese, we were joking that they went down to the corner store and would go. They would just leave, swim around, check out stuff in their lagoon. They would play for a bit, and then you'd just see them go press their buttons. Yes, super neat. Their system of doing it was very laid back. They were super successful, very good at it, but they didn't use that like kind of as much of the body language approach compared to Calusa and Alita, but they did still succeed more with those whistles. So then study 3, all right, they use whistles to do it. Let's make it a little bit harder, and let's also think about cooperation for dolphins is super important in the wild. They use cooperation to hunt. So foraging, we see a lot of cool cooperative techniques. Here in the Keys, we have some really unique cooperative feeding techniques that we see Florida Keys wild dolphins doing. But we're also interested, if now we know they're cooperating with sound, what happens if we make sound a little bit harder in the ocean? So in the wild, this comes from things like boat noise, shipping noise, underwater construction. We did it with an underwater speaker for the live stream. It's right in the middle of the dock. You'll see it's just kind of a blob in the picture. But if you look, it does go down into the water. we got this very fancy speaker to play noise. Now I want to start this with, when we introduced the noise, we introduced it in a boat way offshore over here on Morton Street, and kind of brought it in because we did want them to know about the noise. We didn't want that to be something scary or weird. We're not trying to like make that a thing, and let the boys listen to it. The boys did not care at all. They're in natural lagoons, so they do hear things outside. So once we knew they were comfortable with the noise, what they had not done is we had not asked them to play this teamwork game with anthropogenic noise playing in the lagoon. And when they did, they went from an 83% success rate down to about 62. Yes, significantly not as good at the task as they were without the noise. So the noise seriously impaired their ability to do this incredible teamwork. They also weren't as precise as they had been in the non-noise trials. They also tried to compensate. They did try to solve it. They were louder, so they were whistling louder, just like we would. We would get louder. We would like yell. You'll see a lot of the articles about this one are like, dolphins shout. They were a lot louder. They also tried whistling for a longer duration. So instead of like, I'm here, doing, I'm here, to try to get that extra information across. Even with those two matters of compensation, they still were not as successful at the task with noise. Now for Delta and Reese, this means that afterwards, we gave them lots of praise and lots of attention. No matter what they did, they got all the food they needed to let them know that they did really, really well. We knew that was hard. For a dolphin in the wild, that's a missed meal. That's calories that they're expending. They're still doing the teamwork. They're going through the motion of trying to cooperate, but it's resulting in a failure. It's resulting in them not getting those calories they need. And again, when it's a fun game, from 80% to 60% is not as fun. But for a wild dolphin, 80% to 60% of food intake, that's really significant and that's really serious. So this was published in Current Biology. It's actually one of our most recent papers, and a great one to check out and a great way to apply that to protecting our wildlife. Speaking of, we also do field research in the Middle Keys. We are the field survey team from Robbie's to 7 Mile Bridge. So that area is Dolphin Research Center. We have a permit from National Marine Fisheries Service. This allows us, literally the term is we are allowed to harass dolphins. We try to do it minimally, but that is the same law that protects them from boats chasing them, from being illegally fed or followed or harmed or anything like that. We have small permission to bring our boat closer than a person normally should, just in order to, right now we do photo ID, so identifying dolphins in the Keys. We've got about 140 or so in our catalog of dolphins. We see the same ones repetitively. So they are locals, they hang out. We know like who our most frequent visitors are. We've got pretty good detail on them. We see a lot of them like change over time, which is interesting, like a lot of fin changes. We actually just saw a familiar dolphin who lost the top of their fin. We don't know what happened, but they got a significant injury, but we can keep track of that now. One of the things that sparked us wanting to do this was the BP oil spill. Unfortunately, in that area, there had been some dolphin research, but not a good catalog of how many dolphins they had and the population status post-oil spill when they had dolphins stranding and probably stranding because of effects from the oil spill. When they were starting to look at paying organizations who were helping wildlife, they were not able to show necessarily that the dolphins that stranded were a significant part of the population simply because of inadequate data. And so once it went to court, they weren't able to get money from BP necessarily for all things that protected dolphins under this idea that it might not have been significant. Yes. So I'm not letting that happen in the Keys. If we have this data and can say, no, this is who we have, these are our regular population, we're able to get that information. And hopefully this is a before image that we never need and we'll never have an after. But we want to make sure we have that info just in case we do. We know who we've got down here. And can do everything in our power to keep them safe. We also have permission to do aerial drone research. This has been super exciting. One is body morphometrics, so looking at body weight. If an animal starts losing weight on a dolphin, you can tell, but it's tricky to tell. And you can tell it aerially. We were able to practice using the drone with our dolphins in order to learn how to use drone images to guess weight. We can get them within 1 pound of their actual weight. Yes, yeah, super cool. I didn't do that. A really smart person did that at Miami. She's fantastic. But we were able to weigh our dolphins. We put out a scale and just asked them to come beach on the scale to get that measurement. And in doing so now we're able to weigh the wild dolphins and do health checkups from a drone even. So nice and far away, taking that photo. We also now are working on using that same technology to swoop in and get a breath sample. We were able to successfully get a breath sample from one of our dolphins moving around in their free time. That will be harder on a wild one, but we're working on getting that info again to do a health assessment. It'll also be nice because it'll give us a way to sex wild dolphins. It's very hard to tell if it's a male or a female unless they happen to swim upside down, which they don't do very often, it ends up. They do sometimes, but that can give us that additional information too. And we also do studies on healthcare. Our most recent one was on dolphin longevity. We wanted to look at life expectancy. And one of the most important things we wanted to check in on is how are our dolphins doing? So we compared dolphin life expectancy in the wild and human care. Average is about 29 years, and that is as long, if not longer, than dolphins in the wild. It is about the same as dolphins in Sarasota. They live to about 29 years as well. That is one of the safest known wild populations. Unfortunately, the two other dolphin groups that we have this data on are significantly lower. One of them is 17 years old. But that is because of stuff going on in their environment. That is not a typical life expectancy. We're to see that dolphins, again, in US facilities live as long, if not longer, than their counterparts in the wild. And their life expectancy in human care has been significantly increasing. It's actually even longer if you're looking at dolphins within the last 20 years. And we're hoping to continue to do that with improved knowledge and care too. This photo is Gypsy and her mom, Tercy. Tercy is 49 years old and she lives at Dolphin Research Center. Yeah, she's super cool. That is to say that's not to say wild dolphins never live to 40s and stuff. They definitely do. It's just really rare. You don't see them live that long as often, but it does happen. There's a girl in Sarasota who's in that ballpark as well. She's also really cool. But yeah, Tercy is 49. Well exceeding that, we have several dolphins that do. And that was our longevity study. And again, we've been over a lot of this, but to wrap up, this stuff is really important. Dolphins and behavior. Number one, there's a lot of myths out there. And you can't always just guess the stuff off of seeing behavior alone. We can't ask them. Instead, we learn it. We learn it by studying them and learning more from them. And it also helps educate, yes. Yeah, if Santini can recycle, so can you. But you know, I know I'm preaching to the choir in here. But again, these dolphins, they're amazing. This information, it's interesting to people and it gets an audience that sometimes our conservation work wouldn't always get to. So they are ambassadors for that. We make sure that, yes, they're super cool and look at these amazing cognition things they can do. And here's what you need to learn from them. Here's how you protect their home. Here's how you care for their environment and keep them safe now that you have that care, that interest, that drive. Again, for better or for worse, we like to protect animals that interest us, the charismatic ones. And in dolphins' case, that intelligence is a great way often to get an audience that you wouldn't always reach. But they're wonderful at that. So thank you guys. If you want to check out these publications, you can scan this QR code here. That will take you to our references and abstracts page. So if you want to read any of these papers I talked about, if you're reading them and you want to ask questions, you can also email us. That same page has our email address. You can feel free to email us what you think and questions about what you just learned. And there's the URL if you want that instead. And thank you guys so much for spending your Valentine's Day with me. Oh, thank you guys. Hopefully I left time for questions. I talk a lot. I talk a lot, yes.
I have a question. Have you ever done anything with your training, like kind of trying to teach another dolphin to do a puzzle?
Yes, that's a great question. So have we ever done anything where we had a dolphin try to teach a peer the game? We have tried some. We are interested in trying others. I'll tell you about some of the ones we have done. So that cooperation game I talked about. So you have two buttons, you have two partners. We had Delta and Reese, let's say, they trained together and they learned the game together. And then we did try introducing a naive dolphin, a dolphin who had never played before. She had not been taught the game, and she didn't play. She didn't show interest in it. We tried it with a couple other dolphins, and we tried it with a couple different pairs. And what we saw with all of them is even if the naive dolphin was kind of showing interest in the game, none of the dolphins that knew the game then capitalized on it. They didn't try to press and show them. They didn't try to, even kind of bump them towards the button. There was no, they just sort of oh, you don't know what you're doing. Didn't show interest. That doesn't mean they can't do it. The CNC game is intentionally it's kind of a very specific game. It doesn't mimic anything really natural because we wanted to just tease out cooperation. So that might be part of it. Maybe they don't recruit the way that you and I do. It was based on a study done with human kids, where human children are very good at recruiting adults into doing what they want you to. That's kind of what we're looking for, and we didn't see that. What we did see, though, is if we had, like, let's say, Gypsy learned the game with Flagler. That was her partner. And then, was it Gypsy? I think so. And then, Calusa and Alita, they learned the game together with their partner. And then we had Calusa and Gypsy play with no additional help. They got it right off the bat. They could play just fine, even with a partner they'd never practiced with, but both were knowledgeable of the game already. It was a naive dolphin that we didn't see with, and it doesn't mean they don't do it. That might just be these will all have kind of a shortcoming in that, and that might be one of them, is the way it's designed just isn't intuitive for them to try that kind of recruitment. But it did surprise us. At least for me, I kind of thought that, I think they can do anything, but I kind of thought that they would do that, and I was surprised that they didn't. So that one's kind of back to the drawing board. We didn't publish it because we're not sure that that's like really a significant answer. That isn't something that maybe on our end we're missing something. But we tried it with that one. And yeah, we weren't super successful. What we did see is at least the button pressing. They could imitate that. They could imitate and learn that, but that's not really surprising. We talked about their amazing imitators. The first time Tanner played the game, he had never seen, it's a panel about this big and then a square button about that big. He had never seen it before. He's never done something that was press a button before, but again, to show him the game, it's this signal for go play CNC. And the first time he did it with Flagler, he went and he touched the button. He had seen Flagler do it. Again, wasn't worth publishing. We know they can imitate. That's typical imitation, like our little Hulk hands. But again, not super interesting, but at least the simple part of button press, he could do no problem. The teamwork part, though, he did take the same amount of time of kind of figuring out and learning with the partner. Yes.
Did you try with 3 dolphins, so 2 that had learned together or separately, and then 1 naive one?
That is
watching the 2 perform.
Yes, that is a great question, and we had talked about that too. We haven't ended up doing that, but it's not off the table as another way to look at recruitment. What we would want to do, though, is again we would want to do it and see if the others recruit them versus just plain imitation. We already know they can imitate. We already know they can watch another dolphin and go, oh, okay, I can do that. We're looking to see if someone who knows it can, like, hey, we win if you press the button, kind of like, hey, come do this with me. That says, and so we were trying to find a way to do it where they can't win via imitation, but they can win with the partner's interest. And that's what we didn't get so far, but that is one of the things we had talked about of a way to see if we can get that, which stay tuned.
One more question.
No. Oh my gosh, yes, go
I
ahead.
have a different kind of training question.
Okay.
How did you get to be who you are,
Oh my gosh.
and how?
I don't-
What is your background?
Yes, I don't know how I got to do this. I don't know how they let me do this. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually a marine biologist. I studied at University of Miami, and I'd ended up more in fisheries and loved that. But the reason I wanted to be a marine biologist had been because of DRC dolphins. I visited when I was 6. I had their names doodled in my binders. My mom still has the pictures of just every single DRC dolphin. I was totally in love. It made me love the ocean. It made me want to learn more about the ocean, when we want to protect the ocean. And then I went into fisheries, and I was working for NOAA, and I had just moved from working in Biscayne Bay to I was going to go on a boat, but my boat didn't leave for 4 months. And so I didn't really have much to do. And I was like, oh, that little dolphin place where I fell in love, I'll go do an internship there. And then after 4 months, I'll get on the boat. And I went and saw the dolphins. And at the end of it, they offered me a position. And I called NOAA and said, I'm not getting on the boat. The boat has left. They had a really, really competent girl who I knew could fully do my job. She did a great job. And I stayed with the dolphins, and I've been there 8 years now. I started as an educator and then went into research from there. Research was really what I was interested in, but I did start in education and moved to research. And still learn every day. The training with them, it's a relationship building. It's that two-way street that every day you learn more, and they show you more of them. And eventually, when they learn these things, it's incredible to see them figure out. That light bulb moment is amazing when you see it. Like Tanner, you can see in his eyes from it going puzzle to I know this. You see him change, and it's incredible. But they're the big teachers of it, so I've been doing that ever since. You sure I can't have one more? But thank you, everybody.
Right. Abigail, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if anyone wants to stick around for questions afterwards, you're more than welcome to, because it looks like you all have plenty. And we'll see you next month on March 14th, Pi Day. Dr. Andy Bruckner from NOAA will be speaking about, don't tell him about the boat. He will be speaking on some of the work they've been doing on corals in the Florida Keys and how they're preparing them for the future. So, all right. Thank you all so much.